All right, now we're going to take a look at two different cases of crisis for different companies and analyze the response for both. Let's start off by looking at the case of Bud Light with influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Now, using analysis tools like BrandWatch, we were able to see that Bud Light observed huge spikes in negative emotion, mostly anger and disappointment, focused not on the beer itself, but on perceived cultural signaling. The lack of a clear, empathetic brand voice created a trust vacuum on both sides, and the network map revealed how a small group of influencers drove viral momentum. Recovery metrics showed that Bud Light's responses didn't shift sentiment significantly for months. So we saw a 70% negative sentiment spike within 48 hours, things like anger, betrayal, mockery. And the aspect sentiment that the target of that sentiment wasn't necessarily product quality, it was rather neutral there, but it was about the marketing strategy itself, where Bud Light's target audience was overwhelmingly negative about the marketing strategy. We saw that influencers in conservative media amplified the hashtag boycott Bud Light, and that the brand's neutral apology was really perceived as weak and caused a long-term sales decline. Another lesson for the case was to remember that the target audience, who your target audience is because there was a large mismatch in values, in a backlash between this values-based mismatch between Bud Light and a large portion of its target market. Another recent case for PR management was American Eagle's Great Jeans ad with Sydney Sweeney. It launched. The sentiment around the campaign was largely positive. There was a lot of anticipation and excitement around it. The campaign was promoted very heavily. However, a rapid increase in negative sentiment emerged within days, eliciting anger, confusion, and accusations of tone deafness. Comments of jeans. The jeans was on. It was GENES, not jeans like they're selling blue jeans. So there's some potential racial things being brought up there. The brand itself reported that only one day during the 10-week campaign had more criticism than support. So they ended up getting a lot of support for it. People finding bad against the backlash. The campaign launch saw media attention. Stock rose 10% on the day of the announcement, and by the next business day, negative commentary had spiked. The story continued across at least 10 weeks, which suggested a prolonged sentiment visibility rather than just a short aspect-based sentiment analysis appeared to be more about the marketing strategy. The jeans themselves were viewed as neutral or positive. The items sold out, and the jeans sold out. However, the negative sentiment was focused around perceived cultural and racial messaging, objectification, and white beauty norms. So their choice of celebrity and visual imagery contributed to the backlash. So it was one of the key drivers of negative sentiment here. When we looked at network and influencer mapping, the amplification came from social media, and it was split, like a lot of things right now in the country, among conservative and liberalized, so very politically oriented, with conservatives defending the American Eagle campaign, while liberal media was tending to attack the American Eagle campaign. Recovery and response analysis, really American Eagle kind of just stood to the side and let other people figure it out. And they didn't have too much to worry about in terms of having to respond themselves. They delayed comment, mostly being silent, and they didn't really have heavy apologies. They just sort of held steady while monitoring their campaign. And despite backlash, the campaign drove 1 million new customers. It drove strong sales and stock rise. From a trust and reputation point of view, this was mixed. Some users felt slighted and probably won't buy American Eagle jeans again, while other segments celebrated the campaign. And the long effect here is yet to be determined. Finally, let's get into a little bit about how to handle crisis. So I like to go by the Laura framework. It's a very simple model I like to use when thinking about how companies can best respond to social media and complaints. First, you've got to listen to customer conversations. We've talked a lot about listening stations. You've got to set yours up. You need to analyze your conversations. Relate the analysis to existing information. Is it new information? Is it something you've seen before? If it's something you've seen before, are you going to do anything about it? If it's something new, remember to note it and act on it if things continue. Then you have to act on these conversations. You can't just pay attention to the conversations, you actually have to respond. So how do you create a listening station? Well, there's lots of different types of stations out there. Two of the more prominent are Hootsuite and Sprout Social, and they have very technical guides that they can go you through. They're actually quite easy to set up, but I'm just going to talk about a few of the things you need to cover here. Number one is, what are the goals for your listening station? Are you trying to uncover opportunities for your business, prevent crises, or both? You also need to develop best practices for responding, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Identify what keywords to listen for, and track incidences and responses. So a couple of things you can track here. Industry-related search terms, hashtags, and company-related search terms, things like the company name, brand names, products, executive team members, and key employees for both the company and the competition. You want to be aware of any time something comes up involving yourself or your competitors. Now, how do you handle criticisms or condemnations? And how should you respond to complaints about a competitor? Or should you? These are important questions to ask. Regarding criticisms or condemnations of yourself, we'll go through a flow chart here in a minute. But responding to complaints about a competitor, I think this is an opportunity that a lot of people, a lot of companies miss, because when a customer has a complaint about one of your competitors, you have the opportunity to go in and get a new customer by handling the complaint for them. Now, let's look at a flowchart designed actually by the Air Force on how to respond, or even if you should respond. So here you see this idea of starting up at the top of the flowchart assessment. If someone discovered an blog post about your organization, is it a positive posting? If yes, you can concur with it. If no, let's go through this chart here. Was it a troll? Is it a site dedicated to bashing and degrading others? If yes, if it is a troll, just monitor it. If it's not a troll, is it a rager? Is the posting a rant, rage, joke, or sometimes a satire? If it is, just monitor it. If it's not, is the post misguided? Meaning, are there erroneous facts, things that are incorrect? If that's the case, fix the facts. If it's not the case, is it an unhappy customer? Is it because of a negative experience between of one of the customers or a stakeholder in the company? If that's the case, then restore the situation, rectify the situation, and respond and act upon it with a reasonable solution. So it's kind of a nice little step on how to respond versus how not to respond. And then it gives you at the bottom here some response considerations. One, transparency, disclose the fact that you're a member of the company. Sourcing, cite your sources. Timeliness, take time to create a good response from a few hours up to a day, depending on the crisis. Respond in a tone that reflects highly on your own organization, and focus on the most influential blogs that are related to your company. In terms of tips for protecting your reputation, when you do respond in the same manner. You don't need to go and bully them. You don't need to have an extra show of force. You can respond to the same medium, and if it's called for, you can also respond in other mediums to prevent a backlash in other mediums. You do want to respond at a high speed. You don't want to wait for a bureaucratic response, but you do want to take time to make a good response. The company should empower teams to respond. You want to look for sympathetic third parties who might help defend your brand. And it's important that you build your credentials now. When you have good customer relationships, those customers are more likely to stand up for you when you're facing criticism. Some social customer service ideas. One is to listen to customers and engage with them. This is an opportunity for you to look for room for improvement in your company, but also for new markets to enter. And you can allow customers to talk to each other and allow them to solve their own problems, become brand ambassadors, and really it just goes in the fact that customers trust other customers more than they trust companies. So word of mouth here is really important. So I like to say my first rule of service recovery is don't suck. But if you do mess up, look at it as an opportunity to rewrite the script and create valuable customer interactions. Your recovery steps are to analyze the problem, apologize for the situation, accept responsibility for making it better, and take action to actually make the problem better. And in doing so, remember to be human and be respectful. If you do those things, you're going to be able to recover from issues in customer service and in public relations crises. All right, that's it for this week. Hope you have a great week.